Imagine playing a game that's so realistic, your body gets confused when you stop. If the game's fake world and the real world are too different, you might feel dizzy or lightheaded. For instance, if you're standing up in the game and then sit down in real life, it can be weird. Something like this happened to me before I played ASCII. I was playing a flight game and my plane was nosediving. When I logged out, it felt strange, like my body was still falling. After I finally felt normal again, I still had a weird feeling like I was falling. It was super annoying and something I didn't want to go through again. Luckily there was a way to avoid it. Something called a sleep logout. It meant falling asleep in the virtual world, automatically logging out, and waking up in the real one. I got comfy on the bed and watched as Yui munched on her cookie. When she finished, she flew over to me, flapping her way across the room. Yui twirled around and landed on the floor with a soft thud. Her long hair swirled around her and her white dress fluttered like a ghostly mist. A sweet scent of perfume wafted through the air, making everything feel magical. Yui clasped her hands behind her back and leaned forward a bit. "Goodbye until tomorrow, Papa," she said with a smile. Her dad looked sad, like he didn't want to leave her. "You're right, I'm sorry, Yui. You waited so long to see me again. I promise I'll come back for you soon. Okay?" Yui's eyes dropped and her cheeks turned pink. She muttered a soft clearly unsure of what to say next. "Can I lie on the bed with you until you log out?" she asked. I was taken aback, a blush spread across my face. As Yui's papa, I knew she was just a computer program trying to learn more about the world. But it was hard to remember that when she looked like a super cute girl, her words made me feel kinda awkward. Yeah, I stuttered, trying to play it cool. I pushed aside my shy feelings and rolled over to make room for Yui. She grinned from ear to ear and jumped onto the bed. As she nuzzled her cheek against my chest, I stroked her super long hair. "We have to rescue Asuna as soon as possible," I whispered. "Then we can find a new place to live. Just the three of us." "Hey, do you think we can get our own homes in this game?" I asked. Yui's eyes widened in surprise, and then she nodded. "Yeah, they're really pricey. But you can buy them," she said. She stopped for a moment, a faraway look on her face. "Just imagine it, you, me, and Mama all living together again, just like old times." My heart felt a pang of nostalgia, as I thought back to those happy days. It felt like a lifetime ago, but I remembered it like it was yesterday. I gave Yui a big hug and closed my eyes. "This isn't just a dream," I whispered to myself. "I'll make it happen soon." Suddenly I felt super tired. It was probably because I had used all my brain power on my first big challenge in a while. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard Yui's sweet voice saying, "Good night, Papa." It was like music to my ears. Gentle and soothing. As I fell asleep, everything felt warm and cozy. The next morning, two birds perched on a white table, singing their happy songs. They flapped their wings and chirped away. Then Yui held out her hand, waiting for something to happen. As soon as she touched the shiny jasper, the bird suddenly flew away without making a peep. They soared up in a curve and zoomed off towards the light. She got up from her chair and walked after them, for a few steps. But soon thin golden bars appeared, and blocked her way. The birds darted out through the openings, soaring higher and higher until they disappeared into the distance. Asuna stood there for a bit, watching as they blended in with the sky. Then she slowly turned around and walked back to her chair. The table and chair were made of cold, white granite. They looked really cool but felt hard and chilly to touch. In one corner of this weird space was an amazing bed with a cover. And it was all white. That's pretty much all that was in there. If you could even call it a room. The floor was made of white tiles that formed a perfect circle. You could take about 20 steps across the tiles before reaching some shiny metal bars. The bars were spaced just right, so that Asuna could have squeezed through them if she wanted to. But the system wouldn't let her. The golden bars crisscrossed each other, and went all the way up to the top, where they met in a dome shape. Imagine a huge ring at the top, with an enormous branch running right through it. This massive branch held up the entire structure. The branch was knobby and winding, and it blocked part of the view above. It connected to the trunk of a gigantic tree that was so big, it covered up a chunk of the sky. The room felt like a giant golden birdcage hanging from the branch of an incredibly large tree, but somehow that didn't quite describe it right. Imagine a special cage with metal bars that birds could fly in and out of easily. But this wasn't a home for birds, it was a prison cell meant for one person, Asuna. The cell was strange because it was beautiful, but also very cruel. It looked elegant and fancy, but it was still a place where someone was trapped. Asuna had been stuck in this cell for a long time. She thought it had been 60 days. But she wasn't really sure because there was no way to keep track of the days. She didn't have a calendar or a piece of paper to write on, so she had to try to remember everything in her head. Things got even weirder. The game didn't follow a normal 24-hour schedule, so mornings and nights didn't match up like they should. Even if she slept and woke up when her body felt tired or alert, the timing was all off. Every time she woke up she tried to keep track of what day it was, but she was starting to doubt herself. She'd tell herself, "Okay, today is," but the more time passed, the less sure she became. Imagine being stuck in a never-ending loop, reliving the same day over and over. What if she'd already been trapped for years? The more confused she got, the more her memories of special times with him started to fade away. She tried to hold on to the last moment they were together. It was when the floating castle Aincrad was crumbling into dust, and everything around them was disappearing into thin air. Asuna had wrapped her arms around him, waiting for it all to end. But here's the amazing thing, she wasn't scared at all. She knew she'd lived the life she was meant to live and done what she had to do. In a weird way she was almost okay with dying as long as it was with him by her side. Then this amazing light wrapped around them and their bodies started to fade away. Their souls connected in a deep way. And they felt themselves lifting off the ground, soaring higher and higher. But then in an instant his warmth vanished, leaving her alone. Everything went black in an instant. She frantically reached out and called his name, but a strong current swept her away into the darkness. Every now and then, there were brief flashes of light. As she realized she was being pulled somewhere she didn't know, she let out a loud scream. Then, a blast of rainbow-colored light appeared in front of her, and she tumbled through it. When she landed, she found herself in a completely new place. The wall behind the fancy bed had a big mirror on it, and above the bed was a beautiful Gothic canopy with intricate details. The person she saw was a bit off from what she remembered. Her face and super long chestnut brown hair looked the same, but her outfit was totally different, and really weird. She wore a thin white one-piece dress that seemed way too see-through. A bright red ribbon, as red as blood, was tied around her chest, and to make things even stranger, her feet were bare and freezing on the cold stone tiles. She didn't have any weapons, but she did have something really weird on her back: transparent wings. They looked more like the wings of a bug than a bird. At first she thought she might be in some kind of afterlife, but now she was sure that wasn't it. When she waved her hand there wasn't a game menu popping up or anything, but this was definitely a virtual world, and it was totally different from Aincrad. Asuna was trapped in a digital world, a prison created by a computer. Someone had put her there on purpose, and that made it even worse. She couldn't let them win, no matter how hard it got. Asuna refused to give up, even when the loneliness and frustration felt like they were eating away at her every day. She was determined to stay strong, no matter what. Things were getting tougher by the minute. A dark feeling of hopelessness was creeping into her heart, making it harder to stay positive. She sat down in a cold chair, put her hands together on the table, and whispered a silent prayer, asking for help. "Please hurry, Kirito. Come save me," she thought to herself. Just then a voice echoed from inside a nearby birdcage. "You look beautiful when you're worried, Titania." Imagine the look on someone's face right before they burst into tears. It's like a mix of sadness and frustration all at once. Wouldn't it be crazy to capture that moment and put it on display for everyone to see? A voice spoke up, "So, why don't you do it?" The woman turned around to face the person talking. On one side of the big cage was a small door. A tiny branch stretched from a larger one to the door, with stairs carved into it. Just then a tall man walked through that doorway. He had amazing golden hair that waved and curled all over his head. Around his forehead, he wore a shiny platinum crown that sparkled in the light. This guy had wings on his back, kind of like Asuna's, but they were totally different. They looked more like a butterfly's wings than see-through ones. The wings were super shiny and black, like velvet, with bright green patterns all over them. His face was ridiculously perfect. It looked almost fake. He had a cool nose and super long, skinny eyes that sparkled with the same green color as his awesome wings. This guy was super handsome, but his mean sneer totally ruined it. His lips were thin and twisted into a nasty scowl. Asuna glanced at him for a second before looking away, like she didn't want to see something gross. She spoke in a flat voice without any emotion. "You're in charge of the system, so you can do what you want." The guy shot back. "Why are you being so cold, Titania? Have I ever touched you without your permission?" Oberon asked. Asuna shot back, "Does it even matter? You're keeping me trapped in here, and stop using that silly name. My name is Asuna, not whatever it is you've been calling me. You can just call me Asuna, Mr. Shugo." Asuna stared straight at Oberon, the Fairy King avatar controlled by Nobuyuki Shugo. This time she didn't look away. She gave him a fierce glare. Oberon's face twisted in disgust as he sneered. "How boring. I'm Oberon, the king of the fairies. And you're Titania, my amazing queen. We rule over Alfheim, a place that everyone in the game wishes they could call their own. Isn't being the most powerful couple in the land enough for you? When will you finally trust me and be my true partner? You'll be waiting forever," you say with a stubborn grin. "All I feel for you is total disgust," Suna said, her voice firm. The guy just smiled, his cheek curving up in a sneer. "You're really stubborn, aren't you?" he said, reaching out to touch her face. Asuna tried to pull away, but he caught her under the chin and turned her back to him. His eyes gleamed with a creepy excitement as he whispered, "Lately, I've been thinking, maybe it would be more fun to just take what I want from you." Asuna's head felt frozen in place, like some invisible force was holding her still. His fingers slowly reached out and touched her face. They moved from her cheek to her lips, resting there for a moment. Even though his fingers looked clean, they felt kind of slimy, which gave her the creeps. She got a chill down her spine and couldn't help but squeeze her eyes shut and clench her teeth. Oberon kept rubbing her lips with his fingers, then finally moved them down to the back of her neck. They finally reached the red ribbon tied just above her chest. He gave it a tiny tug, once and then again, like he was enjoying her embarrassment and fear. "Stop," she said in a rough voice, unable to take it anymore. Oberon let out a low laugh and let go of the ribbon. He pulled his hand back and wiggled his fingers, a playful tone in his voice. "I'm just kidding," he said with a grin. "I promised I wouldn't force you to do anything against your will. Remember, you'll change your mind about me. Eventually. It's just a matter of time. If that's what you really think, then you're crazy." "You won't be saying that for much longer. Soon I'll have the power to control how you feel. And it will all be in my hands." Oberon slammed his hands on the table and leaned in, a big grin spreading across his face. He turned his head to look around the birdcage, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Check it out, Titania. Thousands of players are exploring this amazing world, having the time of their lives. But here's the thing, none of them have a clue that our full dive system is more than just a way to play games." Asuna's jaw dropped in surprise at Oberon's words. He flung his arms wide, being super dramatic. "Of course it's more than just fun and games. This game is just a small part of something much bigger. It's like a bonus feature, not the main event. Imagine wearing a special headset like the Nerve Gear or a Mesphere. These devices send tiny electronic pulses to specific parts of your brain that control what you see, hear, and feel. It's like they're sending you messages that say, hey, you're in a virtual world, but what if those headsets could do more? What if they could reach deeper into your brain?" Oberon's eyes sparkled with excitement, and his emerald green stare made Asuna feel uneasy. She got a bad feeling in her stomach. "If we unlock the full power of these headsets," Oberon said, "we can access way more than just your senses. We can tap into your brain in a whole new way. Thought, emotion, memory, we can control it all." Asuna's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't think of anything to say. The guy's statement was just crazy. She took a few deep breaths before she could get any words out. "But no, you can't be serious," she said finally. "Who's going to stop us?" He replied with a shrug. "Researchers in lots of countries are already working on this stuff, and making progress. The problem is that researchers really need people to participate in their studies. They want to know what's going on inside someone's head, but they can only figure that out if the person can put their thoughts into words." A man jumped up from his seat, laughing loudly as he paced around Asuna. And the thing is, he said, every person's brain works a little differently. That means we need a lot of people to be part of the study so we can get a good understanding of how brains work. We're talking about the brain here, which is a pretty complicated thing. You can't just magically get people to test on. That's why it's taking so long for us to make progress in this area. But then I saw something on the news that caught my attention. A huge discovery of 10,000 perfect test subjects. Asuna's skin crawled at the thought. Oberon's plan was finally coming together. Mr. Kubo was a total genius, but also really silly. He said, he had this amazing idea, but all he used it for was to create a dumb game. I couldn't mess with the game server, but it was easy to tamper with the router. So when the players were finally freed, I was able to catch a bunch of them before they escaped. The Fairy King made a big cup shape with his hands and licked them like he was tasting something yummy. I waited forever for people to beat that annoying game. He exclaimed. I didn't catch all of them, but I got at least 300 players. That's way more than any hospital or lab could handle. The virtual world is the best. He got more and more excited, talking to himself like a crazy person. She couldn't stand the way he acted. Thanks to all you former SAO players, he said, my research has taken off in just 2 months. I've created new artificial implants that go right into human memories. And with these implants I can actually control people's emotions. It's amazing to think I can control someone's feelings like that. She was horrified. You can't do this, she said. You'll never get away with it. Your dad will never let you keep working on this crazy project, but he won't be a problem if he doesn't know about it. I've been keeping everything a secret, with just a small team of people who answer to me. If we want to make money from this, we have to keep it under wraps. There's a big company in America that's really interested in what we're doing, and waiting to hear our results. We're going to make a ton of money by selling them our research, and eventually we'll even sell them the entire company. RCT. Soon I'll be part of the Yuki family, starting as a son-in-law, but over time I'll become the official owner of RCT. It will really be mine, and you'll be right by my side as my wife. Asuna's back was covered in shivers, but she stood firm. You can't do this, she said, shaking her head quickly. I won't let you practice for the real thing here. When I get back to the real world, I'll make sure everyone knows about your evil plans. The world will know, someone said, but Oberon just laughed. You still don't get it. I told you about the experiment because you'll forget everything soon. All that will be left is your devotion to. Suddenly Oberon stopped talking. He tilted his head and listened carefully. Then he raised his hand and opened a game window on some kind of device. I'm coming, he said into it. Wait for orders, he said with a sly grin, closing the window. He went back to staring at me with an intense gaze, his voice low and smooth. I hope you get it by now. You're going to adore me and do whatever I say without question. But don't worry, I'm not going to mess with your brain just yet. That's not how I want to start things. He said, I hope you're more obedient next time we meet, Titania. Then he touched her hair one last time and turned to leave. Asuna didn't watch him walk away. She was too busy trying not to be scared of what he just said. The door closed with a loud clang and everything got quiet again. Meanwhile, Suguha left the kendo club wearing her school uniform and carrying a bamboo shinai case over her shoulder. The wind gently swept through the valley where her school was nestled, caressing her cheek with a soothing touch. It was 30 p.m. and the 5th period classes were already underway. The campus was peaceful and quiet, with only a few students roaming around. The first and second year students were busy in their classrooms, while some of the third year students had chosen to come to school for special seminars. These seminars were designed to help them prepare for the big high school entrance exams that were just around the corner. Suguha was one of the lucky students who could roam the school grounds without a care. She had already gotten the okay to move ahead, so she didn't have to worry about getting in trouble for being out and about. But even though she felt comfortable, Suguha wasn't a fan of coming to school just to hang out. Whenever she ran into someone, she knew she could count on them making a few snarky comments her way. The kendo club advisor at Suguha's school was super passionate about the sport and hated being left out of the loop. With Suguha moving on to a high school that's a total powerhouse in kendo, the advisor wanted to stay connected. So he told Suguha to visit the school dojo every single day. Suguha said his blade had been acting weird lately. It had developed some pretty quirky habits. Shugua just shrugged and went along with what he said. Almost every day she was logging into Alfheim and getting into crazy aerial battles. She didn't exactly follow the rules or have perfect technique, but she loved the thrill of it. Luckily, all this virtual fighting wasn't affecting her skills in the kendo club. Today was a great day for her. She had just beaten a club advisor, a man in his 30s who used to be a national tournament star. She felt pretty proud of herself. Lately, it seemed like she could see her opponent's moves before they even happened. When she was facing a tough opponent, her nerves would get really tense, and everything would feel like it was happening in slow motion. She thought about her match with Kazuto from a few days ago. She had tried her best to hit him, but he dodged every single attack. It was like he had a sixth sense that helped him avoid getting hit. This guy could move so fast. It was like he had a special sense of time. It made her think, what if the things that happen in a virtual world affect our real bodies? When we come back. Shugua was walking to the bike rack, lost in thought, when she heard a voice behind her. It came from the shadows near the school building. Lifa, the voice said. Shugua jumped back, startled. Ah, she exclaimed, her heart racing with surprise. This skinny boy with glasses looked really down. His eyebrows, which reminded Suguha of her friend Rekon, were drooping even more than usual. Suguha put her hand on her hip and sighed. I told you not to call me that at school, she said. The boy stuttered, sorry. Suguha got frustrated and took a step closer to him. Her hand resting on the case that held her shinai, a bamboo sword used for practice. The boy's eyes widened in fear, and he froze with a weird smile on his face. Kirigaya, he said quickly. Suga glared at him. What do you want, Nagata? She asked. The boy Shinichi Nagata looked really sad, and slumped his shoulders. I have something important to tell you. Can we go somewhere else to talk? But Suga wasn't having it. Just tell me here, she said. Shinichi looked even more pathetic and spoke in a quiet voice. You already got into high school. So what are you doing here? Suga asked him, confused. Shinichi shrugged. I've been here all day. Hey Suguha, Kirigaya, someone said. But Suguha wasn't excited to talk. Ooh, can't you think of something better to do? She replied. She took a few steps back and sat down on the edge of a flower bed. So what's up? She asked. The person sat down next to her, but not too close. Sigurd wants us to go hunting again this afternoon. They said. Get ready for an epic adventure. Some friends are planning to explore an underwater cave. The best part. They won't have to worry about running into salamanders. But one friend isn't as excited. I told you to keep me posted about our hunts, he says. Sorry, but I'm taking a break from all that for now. His friends are shocked. What's going on? They ask. Why are you quitting? He explains that he has to head to L. This is a big deal because it's located in the heart of Alfheim, a major city at the base of the gigantic world tree. Almu was a really far place from Sylvain. It wasn't just the distance that was the problem. There were also areas along the way that you couldn't fly over. This meant the trip would take several days to complete. He looked at her with his mouth hanging open, clearly disappointed. For a few moments he just stared. Then he moved in closer. You're still working with that Spriggan? He asked, his voice shaking a bit. Yeah, pretty much, she replied.